Well, long story short, Clyburn has been our congressman here in South Carolina District 6 for the past 30 years. And I was not politically involved for most of my life. This is a new venture for me. And I discovered that my district here in South Carolina is the sixth poorest out of 435 districts total in the United States of America. My district is a majority Black district. So I went through Congressman Clyburn's legislative record, and I have not found one piece of legislation that specified the needs of Black Americans, descendants of American slaves, to whom I will refer to as freedmen. And yet, under his watch and the watch of the Democratic Party, and I'm running as a Democrat, for whom we've been voting for at a rate of 90 and 95%, Black Americans have experienced drastic land theft. We've seen our wealth actually decrease from our grandparents and great grandparents actually owned land. We've actually have had most of it stolen and the generational wealth with it. Our educational attainment has soared, and yet that's only really increased our debt via student loans. And still, a white high school dropout has more wealth than a Black college graduate. And I look at the history of America, and I see how the Japanese Americans were interned for some years. And that caused some of them, of course, to suffer physical harm, psychological harm. Some died, and the businesses and their property was lost during that time. They received reparations for that. The different Native American groups, they received settlements, which is really reparations for the harm that they experienced from the American government. Looking at the history of Black Americans, we have gone through more harm than any other group, by far none. I'm not doing oppression Olympics, but if I were to do that, we would be the winners. And yet not 1 cent has been paid towards us. You look at now what's being done for Ukrainians in a European nation over 5,000 miles away. That's not even a member of NATO. I don't really care much about NATO, but NATO does have the attitude if you attack one member, you attack all. Ukraine declined to join NATO when they had the chance. Yet we've already sent trillions of dollars to them. People keep saying billions. It's trillions in the form of military equipment and a form of direct monetary aid. We're going to bring over 100,000 Ukrainians, starting, because we know it's going to be more, give them housing, land, or property, education, jobs, food, transportation, and other resources. Yet Black Americans are 15 to 20% of the population, and yet over 55% of the homeless. We are the highest group when it comes to being landless, disproportionately killed by the police. Black men have the shortest lives, and after Black men, Black women. And the list goes on and on. In a hospital, when you have a triage setting, a person who has a slight headache has to wait. You have to attend to the needs of the person who's having a stroke because they require the most attention. Likewise, Black Americans are in the most precarious situation. We require legislation specifically for us. I am going to actually put that legislation forward. Clyburn has never done that. No one in the Congressional Black Caucus modern day has done that. I'm going to do it. People often say, well, why do that when you don't have the numbers for it? I say you're going to lose every fight that you never step into the ring to fight. I say you're guaranteed to lose if you never even tried to win. I also say that a leader is just not what they accomplish. A leader is also for what they fight to accomplish. So if I put forth reparations legislation, which I'm going to do, I'm going to fight to also get the number and support that it needs.
I could ask a bunch of questions here, and I'm assure you I'm going to, but I guess I would just start with just one. Why is it, and I'll be diplomatic about this, can you be trusted if other issues show up? Because, and let me explain to you what I mean by this. Obviously, you understand that one of our biggest concerns has been the old bait and switch, and that when other issues show up, we usually find ourselves in a situation where it's like, okay, well, if Black folk want something there, we bring in something else that supplants that. So next thing you know, here comes LGBT. And then it's like, okay, we need to see about black folks, and we have to watch out for the devious black folks and disabilities, black folks and LGBT, black and brown. So in your case here, can you explain to people why, based on what we've seen before, because we've heard some good talk before. Matter of fact, the word reparations gets bandied by the Congressional Black Caucus even now. Why should Marcel Dixon be trusted that it's not going to be a bait and switch here, that he's going to say this now, and then once he gets behind closed doors with them, it's going to be, okay, everybody, I've decided we need to compromise a little bit here, and we can have black and...
I'd say that the biggest indicator, even though people change, of what a person is going to do is what they've already done. And I will also say that I've already been behind those closed doors, okay? I've already met with Democratic strategists because my platform is gaining momentum, and I am starting to get noticed by people throughout the country who are in positions of power, and they've already tried to get me to drop the R word. They wouldn't even say the word reparations. They've already tried to get me, okay, they say you have your platform, people can already see you're the black candidate, your slogan says, repair Black America to fix America, that's good enough. Now you can still present yourself as a race-neutral candidate, but you don't have to change your platform. That was their compromise. I told them, hell no. I have put on my Twitter page emails I've gotten from organizations who have dropped me because I am not for illegal immigration. I'm for drastically lowering legal immigration. I'm for deporting people in this country illegally. I am against us. I prefer us to have family support instead of aborting our beautiful black children. And I am not for gun confiscation from law-abiding citizens. Because of those first two, abortion and illegal immigration, I've had Democratic groups drop me. The point I'm making, if I wanted to compromise, I would do it now. Or if I was going to, I would have done it now. If I was going to run on an LGBTQ platform or whatever other platform, I would do it now. That would increase my chances of getting to Congress. I am not making my platform any easier by saying I am not just doing black first, I'm doing Black American first, and not just Black American first, reparations. Anytime you stand up in this country for Black Americans, because they'll be friendly to Black immigrants, but for Black Americans, you are going to get a big pushback. I knew that, and the people have not disappointed. So if I was going to sell out, I would might as well do it now and make my path to Congress easier. But the fact is, I have not sold out because I know, like they say, the person who is faithful in what is little, we are persons faithful in what is most. If I was to sell out to get to where I was going, I would sell out once I got to where I wanted to go. I'm not going to sell out to get to where I want to go, and I'm not going to sell out once I get there. It will make no sense for me to go through the hard work of sticking to my guns now just to get to Congress and then sell out, when the reason I'm trying to get to Congress is to run for Black people. And that's why I stuck to that platform.
Now, the reason why I ask these things is because going forward, what I'm predicting is going to happen. This is my prediction based on what we saw with the Reparations Committee in California. My prediction based on what I'm seeing is that what you're going to see is I'm predicting they're going to have a fallback position. And what they're going to do is they're going to come in and say, okay, we're going to allow reparations for Black folk. They're going to try to water it down as much as they can. So there is going to be a fight every step of the way. And then right after they say that, they are then on the back end going to say, and we also need to make reparations for all these other groups that on the front end you got excluded in the reparations discussion. They will try to include them in separate legislation later. How does Representative Marcel Dixon plan to address that eventuality if that occurs?
Well, I already know that's going to occur. It's already occurring. We already see that the segregationist in chief we have, Joe Biden, he already said that after saying he will have our back, that he would consider reparations if it includes Native Americans. That really infuriates the hell out of me because Native Americans have gotten, and some still receive, direct monetary payments every single month, tax exemption status, billions, trillions of dollars from casino revenue, land. And not once has anyone ever said, well, we're going to right the wrongs we've done to Native Americans only if we right the wrongs we've done to Black Americans. But somehow when it comes to us, it always has to be contingent upon another group. So I already know that's going to happen. I already have a plan on which to deal with it. One, I'm going to write the legislation. So the legislation is going to be authored by me. Now, if other people try to shoehorn other groups in there, like this Black and Brown, this Rainbow Coalition, that when they get policies, it's specifically for them. But somehow when it comes to us, we have to include everyone else. It's never the other way around. What I'm going to do is something that we don't do now. And I have to get us to do it in the way that should be done. I am going to call these people out. And that is called pressure. That is called accountability. So in the event that, let's say, usually a member of the Congressional Slack Caucus comes along and they want to add on other marginalized groups. I've had a lot of Black people mention other marginalized groups. And I'm focusing on the main group that was government sanctioned marginalized. I am going to highlight those people, what they're trying to do. And that's what I'm going to need all my reparationist family come and back me up and making sure that reparations is going to be something that's worthy of reparations. When I get to Congress, I hope to have other people with me, like Tamara Shealy Johnson of Georgia, who's running on a reparations platform, and William Somerville in California, who's running on a reparations platform. I think there are some others out there, but I don't know them like that, and they could just be using reparations as a buzzword. But if I am running my campaign, I'm going to be there alone, just thinking that y'all are going to have my back, because they know I am not going to have much support. Even if Tamara and William do get there with me, that's when I'm going to need y'all to come to my back. Call them, identify them, call them out, and then blow up their phones, call their offices, write them letters, and we put the pressure on them to make sure that when reparations is done, it's done to the people to whom the debt was originally owed. And that is the people who are the descendants of those that were enslaved by the American government.
While we're discussing that, one of the other things that we're seeing here is the reparations is a very good foundation to begin with, but we also have to have an overall socioeconomic strategy going forward, because you have resources in government and how those resources are distributed, and the policy of the government is going to be important. So when it comes to Black people in particular, what would you ideally, and I'm not saying necessarily, you're going to have to make sure of that, but if you had your ideal, what do you ideally see as the American government's socioeconomic policy toward the descendants of slaves in America?
I don't want to be redundant, but no, it is reparations. And even though I know that doesn't include Black immigrants, here's the truth of the matter. And this is something that actually bothers me, and I'll explain why. They say a rising tide lifts all boats. We know that's a lie in America. When America tide rises, Black Americans are thrown out of that boat and fed to the sharks like we were during the transatlantic slave, even though we are the ones that built the boats. But when Black America tide rises, all boats are lifted. There was a study done by Citigroup. Citigroup is one of the largest financial services in the world. So if anyone doubts this study, you need to go check who's handling your money. And I guarantee you somehow, some way, if not directly, Citigroup is involved. They said that the United States of America had lost $16 trillion because of anti-Black racism. Keep in mind, the GDP of the United States of America, which means our total worth in products and services, is $19 trillion. So we could have been twice as wealthier had this country done reparations in the year 2000. If we go back further, imagine how much more it compounds. We probably leave the trillions and go to a number that's much higher than that. The point of the matter is, when Black America tide rises, all boats are lifted. And I had a debate recently, a discussion with Michael Harriot of The Root and the Grill about this matter, race-based reparations versus lineage-based reparations. And he made a point. I didn't agree with his thing about race-based reparations working, But he did make a point that's true, that the majority of Black immigrants live around Black Americans, even more so than some freedmen, Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves. Black immigrants are sometimes more likely to live around Black people. When Black Americans get reparations, that is an automatic boon and policy right there to all Black people. Because first of all, over 90% of the Black population of the United States of America are freemen. And then second of all, since Black immigrants are often in our immediate proximity, they are going to benefit from the businesses in the Black Wall Streets that we are going to build, from the surge and increase of the value of the property taxes, from the thriving neighborhoods that are going to return that we once had, from the community initiatives we are going to do, and to support their businesses. Since no group of Black people in the world, and this is something we can debate, but my position is one that's usually backed up with facts. No group of Black people in the world has been more pan-African, I would say, or pan-Black, I would say, than Black Americans, where we usually root for all people Black. And even though we have now started to push back against that, because we really have to be more selective with for whom we root, that will definitely be the case with Black immigrants. They will benefit for us. But as it pertains to Black Americans, generally, reparations is still the go-to policy this government has to do.
I want to ask a question about something else here before I get to some other policy positions here. I think it is a fair question to ask, although I don't think it is a question to be toiled over unnecessarily. There are people who have expressed concerns, and I will always entertain a reasonable amount of scrutiny. What I will not entertain is a circular amount of scrutiny, which is why I'm going to ask this question one time and one time only. And anybody who does not like it, you have the opportunity to go and wash your grandmother's corns. Now, I will say that there are people who are concerned that if they vote for Marcel, they are concerned about a certain level of possibly looking later down the line in an LGBT bait and switch. What would be your response to that?
Okay.
And I'm referring to the candidate personally.
Okay. I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier. I've had people already come to me trying to get me to put LGBTQ on my platform. There are LGBTQ groups that are ready to write big checks for me if I would just add something for them. Doesn't even have to be anything specific for them. It can just be an overarching policy that just includes them. I won't do it. And I want to say, I'm going to continue with that, but I want to say it real quick. No one has been, I know people have pretended to put us first and they haven't, but no one has pretended to the extent of what I am doing with my platform. I have put out a platform that is 100%, the centerpiece is Black Americans and reparations. There's no other group mentioned, no Black and Brown, no LGBTQ. If I wanted to bait and switch to the LGBTQ platform, I would do that now so I can get money to help get to Congress. I am not doing that because I want to show people that if I don't compromise now, I'm not going to compromise then. Here are the facts though. It just makes no sense. There has been a surge in legislation to give LGBTQ people protection and legislation. I don't know if people know this. There's even really reparations being done for LGBTQ people who were denied the right to marry and therefore not able to inherit some of the benefits that they would have gotten had they been allowed to marry earlier. All of that's been done. And yet Black people whose sexual orientation falls into that category of LGBTQ are still far to the bottom with their heterosexual counterparts. So why would I do an LGBTQ bait and switch when it's been shown the issue is not with Black Americans, us being LGBTQ, the issue is with us being Black. It would not improve our lot in life not one iota, and that includes my lot in life as well. So the main point is, if I was going to sell out, I would have done it now, and my donations would be through the roof from those LGBT groups who are just ready to give donations to candidates. But I don't want their donations. The only thing I want for them, if they want to donate and they want to support, is support my reparations platform. And from that, I hear crickets. I've actually used my platform to call them out. But my platform is to repair Black America, and LGBTQ policies that we have seen modern times has not done one bit to make a Black American's life any safer. As a matter of fact, during this time, the life expectancy of Black men has actually gotten shorter. So as a Black man, that wouldn't do one bit of good for me.
I want to ask you a question about going forward here. If you're going to be campaigning, the Carolinas have always been a place where a lot of the population is skewed older. How do you plan on making inroads among that older James Clyburn constituency?
Well, I talk with them and I speak with them and I provide them with education. Not saying I know more than them, but I educate them as to what I'm trying to do and why. For example, in South Carolina, especially my area here on the coast, the Gullah Geechee people, we have lost hundreds of thousands to millions of coastal front property that is now worth in the millions, if not the billions. They've built world-class resorts where my people used to fish, used to have rice farms, used to have garlic farms and orchards. We've lost it from 1910 to 1997 through things such as heirs property. South Carolina was ground zero for that, where all you had to do was find one person who was an heir to the property, because there was no will written by our ancestor, because either they couldn't read or write, or they couldn't afford a lawyer, or a lawyer deceived them, or a lawyer went to work them for whatever reason. They didn't leave a will. So we all became a share in the property, but none of us can get equity or the value of the property to actually enrich ourselves. But you can live there. Usually you can only put a mobile home there. That's why many South Carolinians, Black South Carolinians like myself, live in mobile homes. It's the main thing we can put on our property. They've seen their property stolen from them, property that my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and their great-grandparents wanted us to inherit so we can have generational wealth. They've literally seen it stolen. They've literally seen our people wake up in the middle of the night being told, you got to move, you've been bought out, here's your share of the property. It could be as little as $2,800, and a person, usually a white family with wealth, can get as many as 100 acres for as little as $2,800. That's not what the property is worth. It's worth way more than that. That's all we would get for it. They have experienced those things. I let them know what could have been done to save it. That federal legislation could have been written to protect Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, freedmen's property from eminent domain and from what was called partition sales. The example I just gave of buying a person out, and it was not done. I tell them what I plan to do in the federal government, and I let them decide. Are you going to vote based on whom you like or whom you know? Clyburn, because they may know him. Now, a lot of them do not like him, believe it or not. They may only vote for him because they have a fear of a Republican candidate winning. Or you're going to vote for someone who's not trying to sell himself to you because I'm Black like you, I'm going to get you like you, but I'm coming to you based on policies. I talk to them about how the high presence of illegal immigrants in our community, and more illegal immigrants coming here, and legal immigration. All studies, whether it's been a liberal platform or conservative platform, has shown that immigration is very, very, very harmful to the Black American community. It correlates with as much as an 80% in decrease of wages, 60% increase in unemployment, 25 to 30% increase in mass incarceration, and Black men bear the brunt the most. And then I ask them, how are your sons doing? Your grandsons doing? How are they doing? And then I get the stories about how their grandsons and great grandsons knew how to do lawn maintenance, who knew how to do carpentry, painting, heating and air, electrical work, and now they can't find jobs in those fields because they have illegal immigrants often who are now doing those jobs. And I tell them, Here's what we can do. E-Verify. That means if any employer has someone working for them illegally, and they have not done E-Verify, which can always show if a person in this country legally or not, that employer will be held accountable, and their illegal immigrants who are employees will immediately be deported. That right away will make an abundance of jobs in fields which we as Black Americans, freedmen, once dominated, available once again. And Black men, like most men, when they feel more economically empowered, they're more likely to marry. The Black marriage rate will increase, Black families will increase. And when you have strong Black families, you have strong Black communities. When I let them see what's being done, what has been happening to us, which most people notice, what could have been done, which has not, and what I'm going to do, it never failed, especially the older Black ladies, probably see me as their grandson or my age, their great-grandson. It never fails. They'll always ask me, do you have more of those flyers? And usually they start calling their church buddies or their buddies from the senior citizen center, because I've had both of those things happen. And even today I put a video up on my Twitter page, talk to someone at the gas station. They won't let me go. It never fails. They want to talk to me more, get more information, and want to further connect with me. So how do I reach them? I reach them by educating them on our condition. You may have a retirement pension, but how are your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren? And if you have no children, your grandnieces, your grandnephews. I show them the data. I show them what I plan to do about it, and I give them the dignity of being able to make their own choice, but also letting them know if they vote for Clyburn and keep doing what they've been doing, we're going to keep getting what we've been getting.
I want to ask a question here about the police. Before I do, I just want to deal with this. And by the way, I already know what I'm going to say, and then I already know what I'm going to do. I'm saying this for the chat room and whatnot because I want to make a point. This is a teaching moment. I want to ask this before I get to asking about the police here. Very interesting shirt you have on there. I suspect I already know the answer. Couldn't help but notice it's got a colorful tint to the lettering on it. Could you explain why that is?
Gullah Geechee people, we are people who wear very bright, vibrant colors. Okay? So one though, this color here, this color is called pink blue. It's a color in the Gullah Geechee community is believed to ward off evil spirits because it resembles the ocean, and the belief was that evil spirits were afraid to cross bodies of water. But if they did, or they came too close to us, it turns them into benevolent spirits. This one here is the color of the sand that represents the coast. This is sweetgrass green, which represents the verdant greenery of the lush greenery of our area, and also the color of the sweetgrass baskets. Other colors here are representing how we are bright people who are very vibrant and colorful personalities. So the colors, wearing pink doesn't mean a person is wearing an LGBTQ flag, and that's what anybody's ignorant enough to think.
Thank you for explaining that. Now, if anybody has any questions about that, you will refrain from putting that in the comments. So to my mods, if anyone has a dispute about that, since he has explained what that is, for the sake of making sure the conversation in my chat room flows good, I want you to ban them. He has given his explanation. You will accept it or you will not, but that is the explanation you've been given. As far as the police are concerned, I'm sure you're aware that Representative Clyburn, made it very clear that he felt that we should not use phrases like defund the police because that was sloganizing, and that he thought that we were actually putting people's lives in danger simply by saying defund the police. So where does Representative Marcel Dixon come down on the subject of defunding the police, or police reform, as it were?
Well, one, I'm not so interested in reforming the police as they are now, because the way it is now, it cannot be reformed. I am for getting rid of the need for police officers in our community to begin with, and for holding the police accountable. One, the FBI sent a letter in 2007 or 2008 saying that white supremacists had infiltrated police precincts and departments throughout the entire country. Obviously, nothing was done about that because they already figured that white supremacists were going to mainly be antagonizing Black Americans. So who really gave a damn? I am immediately, and this is on my platform, going to call for a commission to thoroughly investigate every single police officer to identify anyone as much to the extent possible who may be affiliated with white supremacists or any other type of hate groups. Because if the FBI, an organization that also has a history of dabbling into anti-Blackness, was formed with the purpose of framing and murdering Black leaders, can even admit that the police precinct had been infiltrated by white supremacists, then we know that's the case. That's one. Two, there needs to be a national database of all police officers and any past infractions. That exists for teachers. A person can pull up my teacher certificate and see everything. They can do it publicly. Why should that not exist for police officers who are supposed to protect and uphold the law? The difference between a police officer and a teacher is that a police officer has the right to use lethal force. So they definitely need to have their records out there. On the matter of lethal force, there should be a standard, a strict national standard for the use of lethal force. Saying you were afraid, ethnic gonna cut it. Because if you are trained, okay, to assess a situation and to know when to use lethal force, and you're afraid, how much more afraid should a person like a Mayor Locke, who was sleeping, only for the one to bust into the house where he was, and he grabbed his gun, but never even pointed at a police officer, how much more of a right should he be afraid? So I also feel there needs to be legislation introduced where the same way they got these stand your ground laws, okay, if they want to have laws like that, we need to expand them. We should be able to stand our ground against the police officers because, my people, we cannot just sit there and think that we obey everything a police officer says. Yes, we should be cooperative, but if a police officer is endangering our lives and we know that is not something they are constitutionally allowed to do, we should have the right to defend ourselves. And really, we don't need a document to tell us to do that. But I want to give our people legislative protection. So we should have the right to stand our ground against police officers who are taking advantage of their authority. And last but not least, I am for us Black Americans being able to police our own communities. So my platform calls for resources where we can do community-directed public safety, where, as it used to be in my community, I rarely saw the police growing up. When something went down in my community, it was my uncles, my male cousins who came and put things in order. Rarely ever saw the police, ever. I want us to get back to that time period like the Black Panthers envisioned, where we police our own community. We have the resources we need, and them leave us the hell alone. We get the training, we get the weaponry, and we police our own selves. So that is where I stand on that right now. And also, qualified immunity, so I know people are going to bring that up. We need to stop. That's low. That's the floor, okay? Qualified immunity simply means we can directly sue a police officer that has harmed us in the most simplistic explanation. That's a low ball. I am for amending the Constitution. There's a constitutional limit to the police use of force. A police officer cannot deprive someone of their pursuit of justice, happiness, liberty. But it says knowingly. And where is it in the legal judicial system, which is really an injustice system, on which we always get caught? It's on proving intent. And a lot of time, a grand jury, from what I've researched, will not bring a police officer's case to trial because they couldn't prove intent to harm. That's what that coon Keith Ellison pretty much just said with these police officers murdered Mayor Locke. I am for amending the Constitution and taking the word from saying knowingly to saying willingly, which says, even if you did not know you were going to harm this person, or maybe you didn't mean to, you should have known better. is same charge with reckless driving. I didn't mean to cause that accident, but as a person who holds a driver's license and took the responsibilities that came with that license, I should have known better than what I did. We need to change it to recklessly, and right then and there, we change the game. So not only can we sue them by repealing qualified immunity, they can go to prison and stay there for the rest of their life, as I feel should happen with other murderers as well.
Very interesting how in the state of Minnesota, Muhammad Noor didn't know that Justine Damon didn't have a weapon. That didn't prevent him from going to prison. That didn't prevent anything from happening to him. And that was a complete and total accident, but yet nobody was screaming that it would be the end of civilization for him to go to prison, even though everyone concedes that, oh, by the way, it was completely accidental and he didn't mean to. All of a sudden, that's what you get hit with there. So I find that very interesting in that regard. And I'm from the old South.
Real quick too. I left one part out, and this is because it's still in development phases. Everything I try to plan, I try to have it come from me, something that I know is what's important to my people and my constituents. My constituents are people who I'm going to serve. My people are my freedmen people. Everything that's important to my freedmen people is going to be important to me. I am looking at legislation about these juries and these judges. I don't know why we give these judges a God-like stance when we are Black Americans in this country, and there's a easily verifiable history of judges and juries simply letting murderers get away with murder, the Emmett Till being just one of many examples, because the person who was murdered or was a victim was Black. There cannot just be this trust the jury, trust the judge. There has to be some sort of accountability for them too. I'm looking into that. I'm not going to release any details, but I'm looking into that as well.
Well, I mean, the grand jury thing, that's really a canard. I mean, a prosecutor with a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich. I mean, it doesn't even have to pass, intent threshold at that point. He can get anybody indicted. If it doesn't pass by a grand jury, that is because the prosecutor does not want it to get past the grand jury. So he can indict a bottle of water if he wanted to. It's really just that simple. I want to go on here, though, for what you said about why we wouldn't need police. As you know, crime occurs because of economics and education. And if you deprive people, if you maneuver them in that situation, then crime can be generated. The 5 Points area of New York, historically, from Irish to Italian to Black people, it doesn't matter who they put there. You put them in those conditions and crime thrives. So, of course, you can go ahead and take advantage of that. As far as this federal system is concerned, I want to find out what are your thoughts and ideas about how the federal system treats crime, because in many ways they are the ones who fund what happens at the state level, as you know, with 3 strikes. So go the feds, so go the states. How would you, right now you can see that they're claiming they're doing things for Black folk, but we're taking a look at some of the state prisons and things like that. In that regard, what changes would Representative Marcel Dixon make as far as federal funding for prisons and oversight of state prisons?
Well, as I said on my website, if you want to fight crime, you have to fight poverty. So as far as prisons goes, this is what Joe Crow did, or Joe Biden, whatever. His crime bills, people always talk about the one in 1994, he actually authored many crime bills and did actually a lot of tough on crime legislation in regards to violent crime, which was counterproductive because it actually caused an increase of violence, and drugs, which he wanted anyone on drugs who was Black to get thrown in jail, but obviously not his son, who's an addict, but that's a whole other conversation. He incentivized funding for states to build more prisons. That's going to get cut out for me. Also, here's the thing that people don't understand. No one's tougher on crime, violent crime, than I. I have no sympathy for people who are first-handed murderers or who are truly menace to societies. However, what we do in America is we think throwing everyone in jail is a good answer for crime. No, because the truth of the matter is the majority of crime is non-violent offenses. Right now in federal prisons, I'm not going to give a percentage, but I think it's like somewhere between 36 to 50. Nearly half of the federal prison population is in there for non-violent offenses. These are people, mainly Black men, who can be out in their communities, being fathers to their children, working, helping to pay taxes, and they're locked in prison for sometimes as simple as marijuana possession. Here, there are many problems with that. One, it's dumb. Two, when you focus and try to arrest people for every single little crime, you overextend yourself. And the people who are really, truly threats to public safety, you don't have the resources to really attend to those matters because you're trying to attend to everything. What we need to do is like what I gave the analogy in the hospital, a triage system. Crimes that are nonviolent offenses like criminal trespassing is one of the offenses that people get thrown in prison for the most are usually trespassing charges, property vandalism, things like that. Those things are high up there when it comes to imprisonment. Those type of crimes can be handled through systems of finding, community service, put those people to work, but we do not have to jail them. We should reserve prison for the violent offenders among us. So I will cut out incentivizing to give state funds for building prisons and instead incentivize states to build quality, affordable housing, to put paraprofessional and teachers assistants in schools, to put in more guidance counselors and psychologists in our schools, to increase the pay of teachers and all school staff and social service employees so that they can help families before they find themselves underwater in a situation when they see their children are at risk of being taken from them. Those are the type of incentives I want to fund. Private-owned prisons should be abolished at all levels. We should not be looking to people to own a prison as a path to entrepreneurship, because that way, those same people who are often already rich and powerful, whose family members are oftentimes the biggest criminals, are going to want to have legislation and going to have lobbyists to get legislation where they're going to be throwing people in jail for something as simple as jaywalking. So we use our resources, our finite resources, to address the violent crimes among us, the ones that are the most destabilizing to society, and those white-collar crimes that often see billions and trillions of dollars that could be used to house people, to feed people, to shelter people, improve our infrastructure, improve our healthcare system, and so forth, so on, go into corrupt politicians and corrupt people in these different corporations' pockets. Now, that is what I want to do in regards to the penal system. But on a social economic level, you have to, and this is something which is universal, Medicare for all. You have to make healthcare accessible to everyone, quality, not just for physical, but for mental health reasons. Sometimes violent crime is really a manifestation of mental health issues that have gone untreated. When in the case of Black Americans, they did a study on people who were survivors of the Holocaust. They did a study on their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, showing they had heightened levels of anxiety and depression. Well, if that was from the years of World War II and the Holocaust, how much damage psychologically has chattel slavery, Jim Crow, redlining, lynch mobs, land theft, and all the other forms of brutality that Black American freemen have experienced done to our psyche? So high levels of stress are also contributing to crime. We have to have a livable wage so that people aren't always under so much pressure and living in states of uncertainty where one little flat tire could put them on the street. We have government-provided quality child supervision. We need to have in our neighborhoods a food and housing security where people never have to worry about they have enough food to eat or they have a roof over our head. Other things in a community that has been shown to lower the crime rate are things about which we may not often think. Good infrastructure, open spaces where people in the community can mingle, good street lighting, lowering abandoned buildings, also common sense gun safety legislation, and also investment in the school system and family support services. Those type of things are what really lowers street crime.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Marcel, because I did go by your website here, And I did check that out, marcelforcongress.com.org.
Yep.
.com. And under your platform there for better education, I couldn't help but notice that you did have a part in there that said require parents and guardians of all children enrolled in public school have and maintain a working telephone number where they can be readily contacted and that they can show engaged involvement with schools if their child presents a disciplinary challenge for the school institution. So I actually think that's a pretty good thing there. I like to hear about responsibilities, so that's perfectly fine. I don't have an issue with that at all. I think that's a good thing there. Plan for better thriving communities. I'd like to read a few of the bullet points that you made here. Introduce a federally mandated livable wage that corresponds to the cost of a person's geographic area. Conduct an inclusive study on poverty to have a real idea of the data. Make Medicare available as an option to all individuals. Focus on prevention of disease. Substitute abortion outside of exceptional circumstances with strong support for thriving families and communities. Great. Shift to a community-directed public safety approach, because I liked it better in the old days. Although you shouldn't need that, because when you have people who are making good wages, they don't make trouble, and that's the way that works. Install a federally mandated database of officers. Reward police departments that have no outstanding racial disparities in their policing. Because we have databases where they're supposed to report their data, but they simply don't. State of Texas is a very good example of that. Change the language of the constitutional limitations of police force from knowingly to recklessly. Mandate federal background checks and waiting periods for all gun sales and intensify sentencing for any individual that fails to comply with the process. Mandate smart gun technology and safe storage protocols. Now, I will say in particular, I'm kind of looking at those a little bit differently there. I'll tell you why. And these are things, that we can have reasonable discussions about. But the reason why those in particular stand out to me is because you live in a society where white folk, no matter the circumstances, have ready access to everything, especially firearms. So you did mention, quote, common sense gun control. Well, I understand that. The problem is it doesn't matter how we write the laws. Gun control always penalizes black people, no matter what you do, because they will be discretionary in how they utilize that. So how would you go about how would you possibly prevent us from being targeted by these?
Everything that I write on my plan is in the framework of the Freedmen's Bureau returning as an arm, funded by the government, but it's going to be independent. The government is going to finance us. We're going to act as an independent agency, as some other agencies, like the IRS, for example. People don't realize it's funded by the government, but it's technically not a part of the government. That's how I envision the Freedmen's Bureau. The Freedmen's Bureau, when it existed right after the Civil War in 1865, when it came about, it was to make sure that people who were formerly enslaved, freedmen, our ancestors, and people who were displaced by the Civil War but were not a part of the Confederates, but it was mainly for Black Americans, were well fed, had jobs, fair wages, had land, had housing, had health care, had protection. I want to bring the Freedmen's Bureau back, which, by the way, is something that Joe Crow can do right now with just a stroke of a pen. He can give an executive order, and under any of the executive agency of the government, Department of Transportation, Department of Education, he can bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, where all they do is work on addressing the needs of Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, freedmen.
Certainly a protected class status is what you're referring to. So
right, exactly.
That would certainly go a long way for that. Now, let me ask you about one of the other bullet points on your platform here. Eliminate all illegal immigration and find any employer that hires illegal immigrants. Great. Shift more federal funding to households and communities. Now, I'm reading this verbatim. Shift more federal funding to households and communities that are either beneath or 1 to 3 percentage points away from the poverty line for immediate assistance with utilities, car notes, and health endangering home repairs such as mold, faulty roofs, sinking floors, access points, etc. expand government assistance to give American citizens more of a safety net. Now, I would love to have a situation where it focuses only on black people's needs, and I get that. However, I'm going to ask how this reconciles with what you said previously here, because I couldn't help but notice once we got down to this part here, it's expand government assistance to give American citizens more of a safety net. So I'm just going to ask you, how does that reconcile with what you said there before?
What did I say before?
Well, it sounds like we're getting more into generalized discussion here at this point. Shift more federal funding to households and communities. Expand government assistance to give American citizens. It kind of sounds like in these situations here, your focus isn't particularly or specifically on black people in those circumstances. That's not referencing black people specifically. Now, you can have your platform however you'd like it. That's fine. I'm just asking for clarity here on exactly how that reconciles with what you were saying before.
So the first thing on my website, on my policy page, is my Better Deal for Black America, which has the most bullet points and is the centerpiece of my platform. Repair Black America to fix America. But obviously, and this is something that I think everyone understands, I am running as a congressman, and my district is comprised of my constituents, which includes the majority who are Black Americans, but includes people who are not Black Americans. So me running on a reparations platform is not to say to hell with other constituents. It's to say that you're not going to keep telling Black Americans a rising tide lifts all boats while we are literally in the water being eaten by sharks. So we need to obviously have an America that is thriving. And me being a reparationist by no means is in contrary with the fact that this country should be doing more for all of its citizens. This is a country where Medicare should be available for all. This is a country where homelessness should not exist. This is a country where no one should be in a home that's infested with mold, but they don't have the means to pay for it. Like I had one of my nephews, his aunts, not on my side, on his mother's side, died because she had mold that grew in her brain. That is not something under which any citizen should live, white, Black, or whatever. So none of these things are in contradiction to reparations. Matter of fact, you go to the beginning of my We Deserve Better page, which is my policies, you can read the bullet points from my Better Deal for Black America, which has my policy points from reparations. But by no means am I saying I'm not going to have universal policies. I have universal policies, and I make no apologies for that. But my main centerpiece of my policy is going to be repair Black America to fix America. That's the main thing I'm pushing. That's the main thing I'm known for. And I have no issues with that at all. But that does not mean that I'm not going to say to America, you should do things like make college universities tuition free. You should do things like cancel student debt. But I'm not going to let people say to me, nor to my people, that's reparations right there. Or that's something that's going to help Black Americans. So they don't need reparations. Absolutely not.
No, I think that is the proper role of government, which is what we've been talking about. Justice doesn't mean the mistreatment of other people. But in a situation like that, if you're going to represent them, it's like, okay, if Black folk need 10 pounds of care, they need to get their 10 pounds. The rest of y'all, if all you need is a pound of care, here's your pound. Make it do what it do. But the 10 pounds over here. So if they need something, okay, it's not about mistreating people and saying y'all don't need anything. The problem has been, okay, everybody's got needs. We've got tremendous needs that keep getting ignored, and other people's needs get elevated to an outrageous level. So in that regard, I can understand that as long as it is done justly, and justice is giving the proportion that is needed, not a engineered, gerrymandered amount that is not. So in that regard, I can understand what you're saying. I would like to see how the numbers come out, but I can understand what you're saying.
What I said too, I always gave this illustration here. If I have an ice cream and you slap it out my hand and I get another ice cream, you know, I churn the milk and you cut off the whey and all, you slapped out my hand. And then I say, hey, you owe me for the ice cream. And then you give me and everyone else ice cream. You still owe me my 2 ice cream. That's the situation when it comes to Black America, freedmen. we should be doing universal policies to make this a better country to live in. But this country is always going to be more indebted to Black Americans. And that's how it works there. And again, everything I am saying has to be looked at through the lens of we now having a reparations in Congress and the Freedmen's Bureau being back to make sure that Black Americans are always getting the full equity and the specificity that we need. That's exactly why the Freedmen's Bureau is being brought back on my platform.
Well, definitely, like I say, the situation as it's been is that everybody else gets at least some of their needs met, and Black folk get nothing decade after decade. So what needs to be addressed is, okay, we just need to stop the practice of Black folk just getting nothing while everybody else is at least getting something of what they need addressed.
Exactly.
So that I can certainly understand that, because that's the part that needs to be focused on. You've certainly been very generous with your time here this evening. People, if you want to check out more of his platform in detail, like I say, you can definitely go to his website, marcelforcongress.com. All the information that I've been talking about here tonight is there. It's readily available. It's public. You all can read it there. It's not a hard read. It's not put in torturous legalese. A third grader could sit down and read this and understand it very easily. So basically, if you have any other questions about what his priorities are, what he's thinking, or whatever, I think that's a very good resource. It's very plainly laid out and everything. Also, if people want to contribute to your campaign, they are able to do so there. I do want to ask something, though. I do want to ask something in that regard, because now you're dealing with the federal system in that regard. So some folks might want to be more enthusiastic. However, there tend to be limitations on what can be contributed as far as when you're dealing with somebody who's running for Congress or the Senate or whatever. There tend to be limitations in that regard. So I wanted to discuss that, because you might have somebody who wants to go empty out their savings account or something.
Please do.
Well, I mean, like I say, but the only thing is that would that present an issue is what I'm saying, because everybody remembers since John McCain and, campaign finance reform, that I wanted to ask you exactly how that would work for your campaign. So
the limit is $2,900, and trust me, no one has reached that limit yet. But I want to say something real quick. Donations, y'all. Look, if you're in South Carolina and you're listening right now, if I may say this, I'm Jason Black. And if anyone wants to come, my campaign is currently doing a massive voter registration push. Like, I went to the Babies concert, and I don't follow musicians like that. I went to his concert and we did a major voter registration push. Got plenty of people to sign up. People are coming here. I have 2 street teams on the ground to sign people up to vote. The deadline is May 14th. And because votes win election. I'm never going to have as much money as Clyburn unless I get real big, generous donor. I don't need to have as much money as Clyburn, because even though I don't have his money, I also don't have his pathetic record to defend either. Okay? But the second way to vote for a person is with your wallet. Commercials, newspaper advertisements, venues, flyers, the street teams I have, donations help me pay for all of that. So marcelforcongress.com/donate. Please make a donation, everyone who's listening. If you want to have a true reparationist in Congress who's unapologetic, and I'm not there to play nice Negro. And the limitation is $2,900. So if you could do anything between 0 to $2,900, you're good.
Well, brother, I will give you a couple of moments here. If you have any last comments final comments or remarks you would like to make, I can allow you a couple of minutes to do so.
I will. Thank you. Y'all, we're getting to the point of no return. So some of you are probably sitting there, and I know it's always like trolls that come in, probably being ignorant, talking about colors, colorful shirt, colorful hat. This is what's happening to Black America right now. I've already said, I'm going to restate it. We own less homes now than we did during Jim Crow. We've had stolen 14 to 15 million acres of land out of the 16 to 19 million acres that our ancestors fought to get and fought to protect and keep. We are now 1 million acres of property, okay? We, Black women, have the highest abortion rate while they're telling illegal immigrants that you can get to stay in America because of your children. They're telling us to get rid of ours. At the same time, our children, 5 to 12, Black children, have the highest suicide rate. We are less likely to have a car than any other group. Illegal immigrants to come in and get a car before a Black American citizen. We are over 55% of the homeless in the streets. We got Joe Crow in here, and everyone acting as if Black American justice had arrived, and actually shootings of Black Americans by the police have actually increased. And just like under Trump, who was probably going to do more, very little, nothing has been done to protect us. Okay, Black American men have the shortest lives. We've lost years of our life, and all this attention is brought to Black American women dying giving birth to a child at the same rate as women in countries like the Philippines. And you think something will be done about it. In 2020, the rate of Black women dying actually surged. We've been through lynchings, having our kids ripped out of our woman's stomach, our cities burnt to the ground, Jim Crow, redlining, and the list goes on. That's how we have been treated as a second-class citizen. They're trying to give citizenship to illegals. They're trying to make illegals police officers, give them in-state tuition. If we have been treated this bad as second-class citizens, do you really want to mess around and see what's going to be like as third-class citizens? That's going to happen if y'all keep sitting there talking tough on the internet and not getting on the ground and getting reparationists. Doesn't have to be me, but I'll be damn glad if I'm one of them. And I'm going to do exactly what I say if I'm one in Congress. So I need your help to get to Congress, because something has